If they can't communicate, how do you work with them on a romantic level? Like how does that work?
I don't know. How does that work? This is the thing. When they want something from you, they will communicate, right? Because they're playing the
Jesus.
game.
Are they always playing a game? Because I keep hearing you say, is it always a game? Episode of the That's Scary with Melanie P podcast. I'm your girl, Melanie P, and we are here today to have a conversation that I am so excited to have. A conversation that is so long overdue on the on the podcast streets and on the YouTube streets. Like, this conversation is so overdue. I have with me Kimberly Owens. Kimberly, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, Kimberly, give us a little bit of information and background as to who you are and what you specialize in.
So, yes, I am Kimberly Owen, and I am the executive director of Sage Healing and Wellness. We are a group, a mental health group that deals with trauma. I specialize particularly with betrayal trauma, also relationship issues that center around abuse. And I also coach women in empowerment and how they can pull themselves out of, some of those abusive relationships and really, really start living life who the great creator created them for.
Yes, I love that. So it's interesting. We have an interesting story on how we met. We are both in Charlotte, North Carolina, Fort Mill area. And we were literally, me and my friends were out having a little cocktail in the middle of the day. And we were having a conversation, talking to people at the bar. And you and your husband came up and you heard the word narcissist and narcissism. And it's like, I could see that like a bell went off, and we started having a conversation and we exchanged numbers. And I was like, I have to have you on the show because of so many reasons. We see so many people, especially on social media and on the internet, talking about narcissists, titling somebody as a narcissist. You know, your man made you mad, now he's a narcissist. Your woman made you mad, now she's a narcissist. And I've had experience in the past in dealing with someone that was a narcissist. And when I was, going to therapy for it and, just trying to educate myself on it, a lot of people, a lot of therapists, a lot of professionals, didn't know a lot about it. They couldn't actually see me or see my partner at the time to help treat him. And so I am super excited to have this conversation with you. So let's just start. What is a narcissist? We have there's a lot of different avenues, right? We have a narcissistic personality disorder. We have a narcissist. Like, what is it? What is a narcissist?
Well, Melanie, thank you for having me on the podcast. Yeah. I think it was divine appointment that we met. And I definitely connected with you just because you were really, you and your girlfriends were really just having a great time, and I love to see that. But I mean, narcissism is really it's prevalent in all of us, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can have those traits. So it's really about, how am I showing up my best? And am I recognizing those traits in myself? Okay. Mm-hmm. But then I always look at things on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. How high are you on this spectrum? And, there's only a few people who have this disorder. And a lot of people say that, that word around. Yeah, it's less than 2% in the country. Wow. And this is research. Yeah. So really, it's like, the disorder is, how's it interrupting and is it being abusive in my mm-hmm. relationship? Mm-hmm. Is that person, because you're going to start seeing a person have a pattern, and that pattern is, it's a need for admiration. Mm-hmm. It's a need for, it's all about me. Mm-hmm. Can't really empathize. They really can't empathize with the other person, and they don't communicate. They have this air about them, a grandiosity when they walk in a room, and they think everybody's looking at them and envy of them. And it's all about it. You can start a, conversation and it all goes back to them, and you're like, okay. And so this person, if it's showing up in a relationship consistently, then this person could have a personality disorder.
Mm.
But, if you have, if you're seeing these traits, a lot of times I do couples work, we
Mm-hmm.
can work on those traits while you're in session. I can pick those out and say, gosh, that trait is very similar to, a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a narcissist, but that trait, it's a red flag for me. And
Right.
let's talk more about that.
How do you determine if someone has the traits or if someone has like a full blown disorder?
Well, a lot of times they're not accountable.
Mm-hmm.
They can't admit to it. They can't say, gosh, you know what? Yeah, I really can see that. And, I can see that part of me. Okay, they're willing to see that. And
Mm-hmm.
they're willing to go to therapy with the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not me. This is, and then that's when the gaslighting starts. Like,
Mm.
really, it's more about you. They
Jesus.
don't apologize. They have problems apologizing and owning their part in any
Mm.
kind of, especially in a conflict.
Right.
Uh, they just don't, they're just not going to take accountability. So, and a lot of times, they might come to therapy maybe once or twice, but they're like, I can spot it where they'll turn on me while in session.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and, everyone's kind of, you have the problem. I've even had
Yeah. Right.
sometimes session, like, I can always tell when they're really high on the spectrum and maybe close to a disorder where
Mm-hmm.
they will gaslight me. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm
Yeah.
this. Like, I know what I'm
Right.
talking about.
Right.
And I feel exhausted when they leave. So
Mm. Wow. So can a narcissist, can they be easily recognized? Like just by a regular person like me?
no, I don't think so. I think because they're very charming. They'll enter in a
Mm-mm.
room and listen, narcissists, they have a lot of friends
Yeah.
because you want to be around them. They're
Yeah.
fun. They have like some fun energy about them. They have they're love bombing. So they're always giving you compliments. A lot of times they'll even walk in my office and they're like, oh wow, I know why my wife likes you so much because
Yeah.
your shoes, he'll comment about my shoes or
Yeah.
say something. He's wanting, it's like that charming personality. So
Mm.
no, you don't really know until you start having, especially in a personal relationship with a
Mhm.
person.
You said two key words that stuck out to me that again, social media is great, Instagram is great, TikTok is great if we still have it next next week. But there's a lot of misinformation and there's two words that you said, gaslighting and love bombing. Can you break that down for us, like what that actually means?
Yeah, well, gaslighting, if you're having a conversation, especially around a conflict or situation where you're just expressing your opinion, it's kind of like they want to distort your reality. And you're like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, this is how I see it. And so they want to play with your words and maybe kind of switch it back that you have the problem or this is not true. You know,
Jeez.
always wanting to distort your reality. It's kind of like a cycle. And then they do that and then they'll come back with love bombing. And then
Mm.
they're like, oh, the next day they could like act like nothing even really happened. Like
Wow.
we're back on track. You're the best thing ever. And they're bringing you flowers, taking you out to a nice restaurant. And then you're like, okay, yes, this is what I fell in love with.
Oh my
And then,
God.
a couple of days
The
later, they're
trigger.
like playing the game again.
Mm. This is very scary. I'm gonna tell you why this is scary because being someone that has experienced this, when you talk to people about like what you're saying, it almost sounds like you're lying because it sounds so far fetched. So like hearing you describe these things that in my past I've experienced is is crazy. Like because it's like another world. It's like a delusional world. And to try to explain it to somebody who has never experienced it, it's almost like a waste of your time because it like sometimes when I would describe it, I felt like I was lying because it sounded so far fetched. Like it just sounded like a made up story. So it's just crazy listening to you explain the like things that I have experienced. So yeah.
Crazy. You feel like that's
Yes.
why. I mean, it's very lonely to be in a relationship with a narcissist because you feel like, there's times you feel like it's your fault. And you feel
Yes.
like, am I crazy? Well, maybe, you're always second guessing yourself.
Yes. Yes. And it's crazy because you said that, like my therapist that I go to, she said, you will feel like it's your fault constantly. Like the word that she kept using is they are master manipulators, and they will manipulate you and gaslight you into thinking that, okay, well, if you could just do this and if you could do this and it's your fault, so then, I believe in, like mantras and words, affirmations, and our words are very powerful. So if someone's constantly speaking to you and telling you that, oh, if you just did this, and you, even though it's not you, like clearly it's not you, if you're constantly hearing that, then you're gonna think, well, dang, maybe if I did just do this, so like she told me, once you start educating yourself and understanding, like you said, how the game works, then you know how to play it. But her advice was, don't interact, like don't respond, because it's a waste of time. Do you agree with that?
I
Mm-hmm.
do, because anything energy, we have to make
Mm,
sure we protect our energy fields
right.
around us. And
Mm,
so when we engage in chaos, first of all, you got to remember they don't communicate. It's not that they have a difficult time communicating, they don't communicate.
mm,
So you enter into chaos, and it
mm,
drains your energy
mm,
and takes away, once again, of your sense of identity, a sense of self. And
mm.
so then we have to really protect our energy fields around us.
Now, when you say they can't communicate or they don't communicate, what do you mean by that?
Well, when I think about communication, it's a give and take. It's, we're in dialogue. We're communicating, like, we're going back and forth. We're communicating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both of us are engaged, and we're discussing a topic, or we're just discussing things, and
Right.
we're giving our each point of views, and and a lot of times it is mainly about them. It's their
Mm.
agenda. Like you said earlier, they are master manipulators. They're going to control the conversation to get what they desire. So it's like,
Jesus.
okay, that's not communication.
Mm. Wow. And it's so like that word, like if anyone has watched my podcast, and it's crazy because I love how you're explaining this. And I also love kind of in our text messages, and I heard you say a little bit here about divine intervention and stuff like that. And I'm so big on energy, and I'm so big into things like that. And, you really have to be careful with the energy that you have around you, because it will really drive you crazy, and it'll absorb in you. And like, like we were saying, it'll kind of drive you crazy. Why do you think this narcissist term and discussion has become so popular as in recent years?
Yeah, I think, well, we are living in a society today that it is kind of self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
People are really not being in community as much. And I think that really happened around COVID-19.
Mm,
So people are kind of, they're just doing a lot of individual things, not community things.
mm,
So I think that has created some narcissism
yeah.
traits in people. But yeah, I think that's been the key, right? That's the key, because when we have a personality disorder, it's really hard to be able to be in community, because
Right.
community is like, I want to hear your perspective, I want to be able to listen to you, and I want to be able to share. And so we're finding that a lot of people they're losing those communication skills,
Connections. Yeah.
those
Mm,
skills,
you're right.
to be able to, like, it is not just about me. I want to care for you as well.
Right. Right. Um, when we talk about communication, um, I'm thinking about from like romantic relationships. If you're with a partner that has this trait, or maybe has full blown, like the full blown disorder, if they can't communicate, like how do you work with them on a romantic level? Like how does that work?
I don't know. How does that work? Because this is the thing. When they want something from you, they will communicate, right? Because they're playing the game.
Jesus.
It's like, you know,
Are
and
they
that's
always playing a game? Because I keep hearing you say, are they, is it always a game?
what the game is. I want to get what I want. And listen, once again, we especially females, we want to get real, we can be manipulative too.
Right. Oh yeah.
We're not, and I'm not saying we're narcissists, but like we can manipulate and, to get what we want, and so, but if it's just a regular part of our lives, then that becomes an issue. Okay.
Right.
But they're wanting, so they can communicate in order to get what they want. And it's really hard because the minute they do get what they want and they're satisfied, I always look at it like this. If when they're hungry, it's kind of like they're going to get fed some kind of way. And then when they're full, then they kind of walk away.
Right.
And that's when they've gotten what they wanted. So I think it's really hard to be in a romantic relationship with a narcissist on the spectrum of the high spectrum narcissist, because you're always on a roller coaster.
Right.
Always.
Right. Now, misdiagnosis, are there, because I feel like, and I don't know, but I'm assuming that like people who have like other disorders, right? Like maybe bipolar or, other type of personality disorders, is it commonly like misdiagnosed?
Yes, it is. And most people who are diagnosed with high level narcissistic traits, you start seeing those are usually have a co-occurring disorder like bipolar, alcoholism, borderline personality disorder. So it's kind of, dual diagnosis going on here. But this is the thing. Once again, we can't always label everyone as a narcissist.
Right.
It can show up as very, with those traits. So, for instance, if somebody has an alcohol problem and they have a substance abuse problem, then they can show up very selfish because that addiction is taking them to a place of victimization, which is, once again, a lot of narcissists use. I'm the victim, I'm the,
right.
For me. So, we have to really, I think as a therapist, I have to peel those layers off.
Right.
And really the root of narcissism is a lot of times it can be neglect of a child or overpraising a child.
That is interesting. And I'm going to tell you why. Because, when you experience something like this, you begin to research because, again, you feel like you're going crazy. So you start researching and going to this podcast and just reading to try to understand it. And one of the things that I read in this article is that most narcissists, and I don't know if this is true, but most narcissists are not born as a narcissist, but it is something that they develop as a child. And a lot of children get narcissism from their mother. I read that somewhere. Is that true?
Well, I mean, it could be genetic and environmental. Okay. So a lot of times, we have traits or tendencies that genetically we inherit, right?
Right.
And then so we learn this behavior from a parent who could be a narcissist. And so we're learning behaviors all the time from our caretakers.
Right.
And that does take place when you are a child. And so if you're around a lot of that, especially if you have a mother is a narcissist or a father who's a high level narcissist, you learn some of those behaviors. And a lot of times also too, they do create trauma in your life. And
right.
So once again, if I have a parent who is a narcissist, and has some disorder, then that can be trauma on the child's life.
Right. Wow. Jesus.
It's very traumatizing.
Yeah.
Because once again, you do not have a voice in the family. The child is not able, it's being controlled by the parent who's a narcissist.
Right. You spoke a bit about alcohol abuse and substance abuse. Is that something common that maybe narcissists will use to try to help them? Is that a common characteristic of someone that either has high level or the full blown? How does alcoholism and other substance abuse play in people with those characteristics?
Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot of times, once again, narcissists are not going around knowing that they are. They don't know. They're not open and exploring those parts of themselves that need to be worked on. So I think it's so easy for them, to pick up a substance and use it to kind of numb out parts that do not serve them well. I mean, they're human beings, so we can't we can't forget that they're not human beings, that they do have feelings and they have emotions, um, and they do experience pain. They do, but they don't want to explore that part and understand that part because of the shame is so big for them.
That's a very disastrous combination. Shame and then having like a grandiose. Those are like two
Right?
opposite ends. How it makes me sad, honestly, because it seems like another thing my therapist said is that they're always constantly having a back and forth in their mind. And like I asked, how does someone have a romantic relationship with a narcissist? And you're the most knowledgeable person I've ever met to this day about narcissism. And for you to say you don't even know, that's very sad. Like that is very, very sad. Like how, like I'm in this Facebook group where I see it's like a narcissist relationships Facebook group or whatever, and I see a lot of people giving their stories. Now I will say that a lot of these women are being like physically abused and cheated on all kinds of crazy things. But it's just, I feel so bad for them. Like I see some of them saying how they left in the middle of the night and they had to do all these things. Like, do people that have this disorder, does it gear more to the end of like physical abuse, cheating, or is it just a spectrum as well?
Yeah, I don't think in every case that happens, but that is a big sign of that person does have some kind of disorder going on, right?
Yeah.
For sure. But I think the most common, what I run across, is emotional abuse, not necessarily physical, but that can happen.
Right.
But the emotional piece is just as damaging as
If
the
not
physical.
worse sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, it can display as physical abuse as well.
That emotional abuse, my therapist was saying, she was like, sometimes, and she said this like not to be repeated, but she was like, sometimes she would rather someone have physical, abuse. Like all of it's horrible, but like sometimes the effects of the emotional abuse are so much more difficult to get over. And then if you have a combination, which I'm assuming, like if it's physical abuse, it probably is emotional abuse as well. But then I feel like as a woman, or a man, but speaking as a woman, if you're dealing with emotional abuse, you'll try to like justify it, or, it just plays in your mind over and over again, because emotional abuse, you have to actually identify and say, I'm being emotionally abused. Like, that's such a loaded statement. Like, I am being emotionally abused. And I feel like, especially as like, sometimes as Black women, I mean, just speaking for myself, look at, I don't know why that's on there. Speaking as like a Black woman, we tend to have this title of we're so strong. And, sometimes they even say Black women can be aggressive, which, I don't agree with, but it's like, how can you be emotionally abused if you're a confident woman? Like, how can you be emotionally abused if if you're a very secure, confident woman and you don't take any crap? Like, sometimes it's hard to even say, wow, like I am being emotionally abused. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could just be kind of scary to even admit to yourself that you are being abused. And then it's like with emotional abuse, I feel like sometimes you don't even want to say that because it doesn't sound like physical abuse. People hear that and they're like, oh my God, run, get out. Emotional abuse, it doesn't have that same sting as physical abuse. What do you think some of the red flags people need to be on the lookout for if they're like, and I'm speaking directly about romantic relationships, but I guess in friendships, but in romantic specifically, what are like some of the top red flags that you need to look out for?
Yeah, I think that especially when you first meet, it's that love bombing. It's like the flowers and the dinner and the pouring out all these, I don't know, these grandiose kind of
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
because that's what they're good at, right?
Manipulation.
Yes, they
They
want to
want
bring,
something.
yes, and so when things go wrong, or say that you disagree, or you know really, like, watch how they respond in conflict. Watch how they respond in conflict. Are they really like, what? Are they owning their part? Because in
Mhm.
a conflict, we both are bringing something in.
Exactly.
Okay? It's never one person. And so it's hard for them to admit that.
Hmm.
That's a red flag.
Mm.
And also, once again, do they stop talking to you? Do they give
Hmm.
you the silent treatment? Do they,
Hmm.
are they like, they're not wanting, once again, to communicate?
Mm.
Um,
Which
you know,
is is the lifeline of any relationship, like professional, romantic, friendship. That is a lifeline of a relationship. It's communication.
it is. And I think, playing the silent treatment is very abusive,
Hmm.
emotionally. It
Right.
is probably one of to me, the worst
Yeah.
emotional abusive tactics that a
Hmm.
person can use.
Right.
Silent
Right.
treatment. And
How
sometimes
did
it can go at 2 days.
how did you yeah, how did you get like how did you get involved in understanding and kind of like wanting to focus on this particular disorder?
Well, personally, I've experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And it started showing up. I love working with couples, and it really started showing up a lot in my couples. I could spot it.
Mm-hmm.
And also too, I think I personally, how it showed up in my life, since I did experience it at a young age,
Mm.
I think I started attracting women who were narcissists. Um,
Really?
yes, because I was attracted to that.
Mm.
Not in a really,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say like in a friendship way.
not in
Okay.
a
Yeah,
romantic, but
yeah.
in a friendship.
Yeah. Wow.
Narcissism can do this. And that's why I'm like, everything happens for a reason. I really
Yeah.
believe that. I believe everything happens with purpose and meaning in our life, and people who
Yes.
come into our life. And so it exposed a lot in me, work, that I was like, okay, why am I meeting these women? And they're love bombing me. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh my gosh, Kimberly, oh my god, I love this about you.
Yeah.
You're this, you're that." And I'm like, "Ooh, wow, that sounds good. I like
Yeah.
that." I'm like, "Ooh, I feel good."
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that I can accomplish anything sometimes
Yeah.
around these women. And it's mainly women who are career oriented, who have like this sense of assertiveness, a sense
Hmm.
of confidence, of they can accomplish the world, just really those
Hmm.
things that I admire in a businesswoman.
Right.
And so, and I just remember, like, I said no. Someone wanted me to be an author in their book, or write a chapter
Yeah.
in their book, and I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm called to do that." And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you would have thought that I just destroyed her life, and
Really?
just turned on me. I mean, just completely turned on me. And so I had to look at what is in me that I continuously attract these types of women
Mm.
in my life. And so I really believe that the people that we meet, especially the people that, um, and I kind of like activate something in us. I know that a
Hmm.
lot of people say trigger, and I'm kind of
Yeah.
think that word is just overused. So I like to
Yeah.
say activate,
Mm.
that activates in ourselves, that kind of make us go, I don't
Hmm.
know, I don't know, that
Right.
kind of makes me feel a certain kind of way, is trying to teach you something about yourself
Right.
that needs to be worked on, that
Right.
needs to be worked on. And it needs to be released.
Mm.
So I went into a deep dive with that. I'm like, what in me is attracting these types of women in my life? And
Hmm.
yeah, and I was just like, and I don't know. I think that, and also too, I don't think a lot of people are knowledgeable about this type of trait in
Hmm.
a relationship, in a
Right.
romantic, or in a friendship.
Yeah, because I'm trying to, like, now when you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, have I had because when I think of narcissists, I feel like I've only ever experienced it in a romantic space, but I'm trying to think like,
But this is the thing. I never experienced it in a romantic. I
hmm,
never experienced it in a romantic. So that
hmm,
was interesting to me.
yeah,
Yes, that was very interesting to me. I never was attracted to men who had that trait. I could spot it.
wow,
I could spot it. No, never was attracted to that. But
wow,
so sometimes you can,
yeah,
yeah, but
you know,
it was something that I guess for me as a woman,
hmm,
and maybe as a woman who, um yeah, that wanted, maybe there was a piece of me, a part of me that needed to grow and develop
hmm,
and have that same confidence
right,
that that person I was attracted to had, or at
right,
least I thought, because that's really, they don't really, that's a false sense of
yeah,
confidence. They
it's
really,
really insecurity.
most narcissists have no confidence really,
Yeah,
and they need
absolutely.
constant validation.
Yeah.
Constant validation. That's another red flag.
Constant validation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Constant validation.
And they're
I
not
need
gonna
a cookie.
tell
Give him a
you,
treat. I need a cookie because I did
yeah.
something basic.
Yeah, and they're not gonna say, "Please tell me how great I am." They'll
Yeah.
just kinda, in their own kinda way, you'll like, "Okay, I need to let them, the person, know how great they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
You
fishing for it, so I'll go ahead and do it."
right, right. And again, that's emotional abuse because then it's like, I have this book that I got and it's called How to Stop Walking on Eggshells or whatever. And yeah. And you start walking on eggshells because you're trying your best to not activate this person into what I call an episode. You know what I'm saying? So like I want to make sure like, and then it's like you're talking about the silent treatment. You just stop talking. Like at some point you just stop talking and stop engaging because you just never know what's going to be that topic, that sentence that activates them. But another thing you said that is to me is the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's the realest thing. It is something in you that you have to learn, you have to go through. And I think in like my experience with that, it has been a blessing in disguise because it's helped me look, I always say on the podcast, hold that mirror up to your face. Like it's helped me find like deficits in me that I need to work on. It's actually helped me with my communication because when you're constantly with someone who can't have healthy communication, I know for me personally, it makes communication that much more important to me in every area of my life. So I feel like, it's horrible to go through, but you're so right whenever you say that, it's helping something in you that needs to be addressed. What are some of like the psychological effects of the person who's on the other end, like the romantic partner to the narcissist? Like, what are some of the long term effects?
Yeah, I think I think the most important thing is to, yeah, do that
Mm,
recovery work. And it's very hard for you to do that while you're in the relationship. And
mm,
so when you
mm,
realize that this is not a good, partner for you, uh, I definitely think that, get with a good therapist or coach that can help you really regain your sense of self. Because when you're in a relationship like that, you're giving so much energy towards it that you, before you know it, you're like, who am I?
yeah.
You, after a while, you've been gaslit so much, they projected so much onto you to belittle you, and to make you feel small,
Hmm.
that you start to really start believing some of those things,
Wow.
or you've lost your sense of self. So I think really it's like, okay, now how do I have this coaching program that I'm getting
Hmm.
ready to launch, and it's about reclaiming,
Hmm.
restoring, and remaining in your power.
Wow. Mm,
Because a lot of women lose that, and
mm,
it's a different kind of power. Because I think that what I've noticed with women who are coming out of a narcissistic relationship,
mm,
they can be very, uh, and I understand it, but can overcompensate for the voice that they did lose, and they can come off aggressive,
Mm.
angry, protective. It's all
Yeah. I can see
controlling,
that.
because what all they're doing is protecting their heart.
And trying to avoid that happening again.
Exactly. So they're coming
Yeah.
off like, I know I ain't
Yeah.
getting in that again. Oh, I'm on sure. They're
Right.
coming off like
Right.
they ready to go to war.
Exactly. I could see that. That's
Yeah,
wow.
I
I can
can't
definitely see
do it.
that.
And I
Here's the
understand it. I
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
But see, we don't know. We want to be able to walk in that divine, that
Right.
feminine energy, right? And so,
Yes.
because listen, what I believe, women who do attract men who are narcissists, I think they're the most beautiful women I've ever
Mm.
met.
Mm.
And I'm like, gosh, you are looking at. I'm like, girl, how did you get in this situation? You got it going
Listen.
on. You're beautiful, you know. But there's something there, though. There is
Mm.
something there. I think, you know, the narcissists love those types, right?
I read that.
But there's something that they know. Listen, they know that they pick up on, and this is spiritual. I know a lot of people might. This is just my take on it.
No, I yeah.
It's a spiritual thing. They know that there's a portal to break all that down. They see it. And I think they see it because they grew up. There's things like, like people say, well, I'm an empath. I'm an empath. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you became an empath because probably you had to,
Right.
because of childhood. And that's a whole nother
Mm.
episode of
Yeah.
empaths. But you pick up on things.
Yeah.
Empaths pick up on things. Narcissists pick up on women or men, and they play into that weakness, because all of us have weaknesses and all
Yeah.
of us have strengths. We all do. I don't care how
Yeah.
great you are. Um, uh, but they know how to play on it. And
Mm.
so, and that's why, I love working with women, how to reveal it, and how to, like I said, reclaim it,
Mm-hmm.
because you've lost a sense of self,
Yeah.
and to restore it and then remain in it.
Mm.
So, because a lot of my women clients say, well, what if I get in this again? I'm never going to
Right.
date again. I'm like, wait a minute. No,
Nah.
no, no, no. You're going to remain in your power, and you're going to attract your partner that is healthy and has been designed especially for you,
Yes. I
your
love that.
soulmate. And so, yeah, I think anytime when you've been in a long, I think you can show up with PTSD.
Mm.
You can have post traumatic stress from it, which is betrayal trauma. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's, and that's a lot of what I work with,
Yeah.
which is basically the same, betrayal trauma and PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah.
I'm sitting here like you like this is this is this is mind blowing. Let me ask you this. And if this gets too deep, I can edit this out part. But the spiritual piece of it, I will never forget. When I was in that situation, I at some point I became so desperate for understanding and for answers, and I went to this spiritual advisor, and she said that it was a demonic force. Do you believe that?
I definitely do, because we're working with good and evil. I mean, and you decide what sides you're going to play on, you're going to be a
Mm,
part of. And so we always have these forces, and we can engage with someone who has a very a demonic spirit. And when I say demonic spirit,
mm-hmm.
I'm talking about pride, jealousy,
Mm,
the lust. All these,
mm,
those are spirits that do not serve you well.
mm,
So when you engage with someone else that has that has picked that up, then you got to be careful, because now, once again, you're not protecting your energy field.
right.
You're not protecting your spiritual being.
Mm,
And so we have to purge that out. And that's another thing that I help women do.
mm-hmm.
I love all things spiritual. And
Right.
I love it. Because I believe in that.
Yeah.
And, there was only one perfect human, and he was
Mm,
human and supernatural, and
right.
that's Jesus.
Right.
And so, and when we engage in anything opposite of that, we're prone to bring that into our spirit. So, and a lot of when I work with, and I can see it, when you're working with a narcissist with the disorder, especially, wow, I can see it in their eyes. I can always see it in their eyes. Because it's almost like they detach from their bodies and they become this person. And then they, because I really feel like they live outside their bodies anyway. But I see it in the eyes. I can definitely see demonic spirit in the eyes.
And that's crazy too, because I think about being intimate with someone, again, not to get graphic, but that is such a
Yes.
that's an exchange. And that scares me. Like that scares me, again, not to be graphic, but that's something from somebody going into your body. And it's just like from a spiritual and energy standpoint, what is that doing to you?
It is bringing on, yes, and it's bringing on sickness. It's mental illness. It brings on so many things, and that's why you have to cut the cord. You have to cut the cord, but you cannot cut the cord until it's complete.
What do you mean?
Until you're out of the relationship, because
My
the
God.
relationship has to complete itself, and then you can cut the cord. You can't cut cords until it's complete. And I talk about that, like, how do you do that? And that's, that's some of the things that I talk
Yeah, I'm
about.
gonna have to make sure I have your information in the description for
Yeah.
anyone that wants to reach out to you. Now,
Yeah.
here's the $10,000 question. Well, that's not a lot of money. You said what?
No, well, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say here's the $1,000,000 question.
Yeah.
Can a narcissist change?
This is what I believe. I think depending on like on the spectrum, once again, where are they on the spectrum? Um, if it is a disorder, and I think once again, that's a person who, meets that category. There needs to be an assessment on that person. Um, and I do assessments. But if it is a person who I am showing up with these traits and I take accountability, I know this about me. I can be very self-centered, because self-centered is not a disorder. It's a trait.
Right.
I have a lack of empathy. Okay. If I can say these things, then I'm not a narcissist.
Right.
It's hard for me to, say I'm sorry. That's a trait. Yeah, I kind of always talk about my stuff and don't really listen to other people's. These are some of the things, that if a person can admit and see that, can see it, but have a hard time being able to to keep it in a healthy perspective, or a healthy, make it a healthy part of their lives, you know yeah, I think they can change. I work with there's a particular uh, uh, person I'm working with right now. He has admitted to all those things. He said, Kimberly, if I want to be healed, I want to be
Yeah.
able to have a healthy relationship one day. I'm tired of this. My father was a narcissist. I'm so tired, and his mother was. So
That's a
he
double.
is
Wow.
right, and he is willing, and he has been doing therapy with me. Gosh, for 6 months. No,
Wow.
I take that back. Almost a year.
Mm.
And yeah, he's making really good progress. He
Yeah.
really, really is. Now, with somebody who has a disorder, they're not coming to therapy. They just refuse it, and they're not going to do it. And they're going to come in, and they're going to make that this is what they'll say. I don't know if I like her. I don't know if I like the therapist. I don't
Wow.
even, they're not really smart. What don't, I don't know. I can't afford it. That's a waste of my time.
Wow.
They're always having excuses. They're always, and they will never step into a therapist's office. They just won't. They might come a couple of times, but the minute they get challenged, and you kind of challenge a narcissist, oh, they will fire off.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it true that most therapists won't even see narcissists?
Yes. I don't, I'm willing to work with a narcissist. Like I said, if they have a disorder, they're not going to come anyway. There was one time I was working with a woman, a female, and I just knew she was and I challenged her, and she almost wanted to take my license. Now I won't,
Wow.
I tend not to see, uh, females are really hard to work with.
Yeah, that's crazy. I can imagine because again, that's another double whammy with
Yeah,
the
I'm like,
female.
I if I can spot a woman, once again, they kind of look different. A female
Mm,
narcissist looks kind of different from a male.
yeah,
I don't work with females because they
really.
will scratch your eyeballs out.
I can see that. Like,
They will scratch you up. I'm
oh
like,
my God,
yeah.
wow. That it it kind of makes me sad. I don't know because it's like if they have full blown, and I'm so glad that you spoke to like the spectrum because like I said, like we were saying in the beginning, everybody want to label somebody with something. You see these catchphrase words on social media, and now everybody's a narcissist, but. It makes so much sense that there's a spectrum because it's a guy on Instagram and he says he's a recovering narcissist and he tells his story about how he was like married and he lost his wife and all these situations and he wanted so bad to get his wife back and so he took accountability for being a narcissist and he got all this help and now he teaches others. And I'm thinking from what I read and just from my experiences, if he can do that, why can't other people do that? But I guess it's because of his level on the spectrum, you know? Because accountability seems like it's like their kryptonite. Accountability.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think so. I think it really is. I think, once again, there's very few with disorders. There really
Hmm.
is. There's very few.
Wow.
And they're out there, don't get me
Hmm.
wrong, for sure.
Hmm.
But I really think, you know, if we can go underneath the trauma and
Hmm.
really untie some knots, trauma knots, like I like to
Hmm.
say, you will see a difference in a person. And because it does show up, it manifests from trauma, or
Hmm.
like I said earlier, or overpraising a child, and they never
Right.
can do wrong. They're
Right.
almost put on this high pedestal, like they're
Mm.
godlike, and they're groomed. And it usually what I have found by the mother. If
Wow.
the
I read
mother
that.
is very enmeshed with the son, and
Hmm.
the son does no wrong, and um, and it's almost like, yeah,
Wow.
it's a really weird dynamic
Yeah.
between a mother and a son,
Mm.
how it shows up in narcissism.
Wow. In closing, like how does the process of working with you, how does that look? Like if someone is watching and they're like, you know what, I have a partner or I am the person that I want to connect with you. How does that look? What does that process look like?
So yeah, I will be starting, like I do individual therapy.
Hmm.
But what I have, I work with women and men,
Hmm.
and I do couples work. So, depending on your situation, you can just definitely, look at my services with that on Sage Healing and Wellness. And it has it all listed. But if you are a woman specifically and you're wanting to learn more about how it's affected you,
Hmm.
not so much learning about narcissism. I mean, but more about, okay, I know enough and I don't
Hmm.
understand it. I never will, but I've lost a sense of self,
Hmm.
and I want to, and be authentic to me, because I
Hmm.
think that a lot of times, once again, women are there. It's kind of like, I don't want anybody to know I've been in this relationship.
Yeah.
This is
It's
shaming to
embarrassing.
me,
Yeah. Yeah.
shaming. And
Especially
so,
when it's that emotional abuse. I mean, I really want to make sure that I say I'm not comparing or like saying that one is, but I'm only speaking from my experience. Like emotional abuse, sometimes it's hard to rectify in your mind that, oh my God, I'm being abused. And then it's like embarrassing to say, like, I don't think I would ever say to someone, I'm being abused, especially if it's emotional abuse and it's not like physical. I just don't think I would say that.
exactly. And yeah, because you can show the bruises. Like, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, look, he's you see what he did to me, you can see the bruise. But
Yeah.
emotional, you're having to hide constantly. You're hiding
Yeah.
that from people. And so when you're hiding, you're not showing up as your authentic self. So if you're used to hiding, you create this false sense of self.
Yeah.
And so that's why I created a group. And these are women who are coming together. And in group therapy, it is, I think, and personally, even as personally and a clinician, I think
Hmm.
that's where women can heal quicker.
Mm.
And so that's why I started this group of 10 women, and we meet once a week for 8 weeks, and I coach these women through these things and
Wow.
these specific topics that I feel just from, once again, from my personal experience and as a clinician, what I've studied, the things that you can do to regain, reclaim that sense of self that you lost along the way and restore it, heal it. Okay, what are the tools to heal it? And then how do I remain in this, that I don't, from now on, I'm not going to be picking up this
Yeah.
crazy disorder or these crazy,
Right.
narcissistic,
Yeah.
traits in people. I'm not attracting that anymore, because
Right.
now I am walking in my true authentic self. Because once again, they know how to draw those people in. And
Yeah.
I've noticed about you, Melanie, you are very empathetic.
I get that a lot.
Do you?
I get that a lot. It's
Yes.
crazy. Wow.
Okay.
How did you know that? Like what about me made you think that?
Well, because I think I think you said, I'm sorry, I feel sorry for those people. Like you said that a couple of times. So
Yeah.
that shows me you're very empathetic. You're
Yeah.
willing to say, I'm sorry. You're willing to look at both sides.
Yeah.
And that is what a narcissist loves empathetic people, helpers and caretakers.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's wild because I feel like I'm an empath. That's another one of those like cliche terms that everybody says. I'm an empath. I'm an empath. I've gotten that so many times. And my mom, I was talking to her and she's like, one of your problems in relationships is that you seem to go after or attract people that you see potential in and you want to fix. And she said that is a huge problem that that you need to stop doing because you can't fix people. And I was like, you know what? She said that to me actually over the years, but she's right. I mean, I guess it just took certain experiences for me to be like, she got a point. She has a point. She has a point for sure. Mama knows. Listen, yeah.
Mama knows.
Mama knows. And listen, sometimes as that mother-daughter thing, you don't want to I don't want to admit that she's right, but she's right. She's definitely right. How can we get in contact with you? I'm going to leave all your information. And I just want to say too, I love the thought of all the different services that you provide because number one, a lot of times we focus, especially at, just speaking from experience from a woman, we focus so much on fixing or wanting to help fix the person. And we don't focus on the residual effects that we have. And then also having those options for groups, you know what I'm saying? Like for women, that sounds really awesome. I might have to look into that myself. Yeah.
So yeah, you can definitely go to sagehealingandwellness.com. That's, that is my website. And also I'm getting ready to, I'm having a workshop. It's already sold out.
Oh, wow.
I am Indigenous. I am from the Lumbee tribe, which is one of the largest tribes here in North Carolina.
Wow.
So I am bringing back some of those Indigenous healing ways of healing our mind, body, and spirit.
You are speaking my language. I love that.
So have you heard of the Lumbee tribe here in North Carolina?
And that sounds so familiar. When you said that, it sounds so familiar.
Yeah. So we're doing, we're going to be doing workshops. So we sold out this workshop, but it's an empowerment workshop, doing a lot of just more working with the body, somatic work, working with our senses, doing all those cool things.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I'm getting ready to start my coaching program for women who really want to level up. And I think I'm looking for women who are on a pathway of wanting to, kind of really start making just not a difference in their lives, but a difference in other people's lives. And that's for women who, who kind of want to, have a, assertive or not assertive, but just passionate about showing up their best selves. Right. And so that's another program, but I have all that on my website.
Yeah. I'm going to try to include as much information as possible in the description as well. This has been great. Like I've been trying to like hold back the personal conversations because I'm like, you are speaking my language, especially from the spiritual side, because it's just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on the show and helping to educate and kind of get those conversations started. I'm going to make sure I have all of your information and contact information below. Do you have social media? Do you want to shout out your social medias?
Yeah, well, I'm Kimberly Owen,
Okay.
is basically, that's my, social media, and, Sage Healing and Wellness. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Make sure you hit that like button, you subscribe. Make sure that you click the links in the description, and we will see you on the next episode.